Well, the Packers are getting the day off for practice after getting hammered 27-2 last night in Denver. They will be back on the field tomorrow and Wednesday before hosting the Ravens for a joint practice on Thursday. They close out the preseason on Saturday against Baltimore, and the Badgers just 11 days out from the start of their season against Western Michigan. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil.
Well, that was a long night. I was hoping that our guys would come out with more strain, effort, grit after kind of getting humbled the other day in practice, and then to have it happen again, not where we want to be. And I think it's a good lesson for our guys.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
I really struggled to watch the Packer game last night. I don't think that's unique to me. I don't know that anyone had a good time watching it, but normally even bad football is still good. Like a crummy Thursday night game, or even a crummy preseason game that includes your team, right? I'm not going to say that a preseason game between the Seahawks and the Raiders, like, well, but it's still football. It's bad, but it's football. No, but not a preseason game. A regular season game between the Seahawks and the Raiders. Oh, God, yes. The worst regular season game that's played this season. I'll still probably watch it and enjoy it on some level. Preseason, a little different. But normally when it's your team, you can find something. When my team is involved, even if the game stinks, even if it's preseason, it's something that should interest me in there. There's something I should be able to take away from it. Man, not last night. I think last night tested us all. And it started at 7. Which I like Sunday night football. It's not my favorite thing when my team plays at 7. I kind of like to be kind of winding down by that point of the day. I don't want to be ramping up at 7 p.m. on a Sunday. I don't like that. But I like watching football on a Sunday night. If that game yesterday would have started at 4, like the Brewer game ends, and then we can just right to the Packers while I'm making dinner, while I'm doing things. By 7 o'clock, I was like, no, my day's done. I don't know that I need this. This seems more like a task now than an actual thing to be enjoyed. And I think if it was Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, even Saturday night. Now, I was at the Brewer game, got a Harry Doyle bobblehead. In fact, I got 5. I'll tell you about that. But Sunday night at 7, no, lost me. And then I woke up this morning and I'm looking at tweets. And I'm seeing Packers people tweeting things like, well, on the second watch, I noticed this. I'm like, oh, no, we're not. We don't need to do that. Nope. I don't know that we needed that the first time. And I know that there are dozens of Packers podcasts and shows. We're going live after the game. It's like we all could have taken last night off. Would have been fine. No one would have complained. We definitely didn't need to watch 2 and 3 times today. In fact, I was going to have Bukowski on this week. I was planning to have Pete on at some point. And now I'm feeling like I should push him back to next week because I don't want to condone that behavior. I don't want to be like, hey, Pete, I need your thoughts on Sunday night because I don't. I love Pete. I'd love to have him on, but I'm not condoning any extra attention, any extra value placed on last night. I won't do it. But there was a football game last night. We'll talk about it this evening, I'm sure, for the next 2 hours. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Hope you had a great weekend. The Brewers were fantastic. They're perfect. Please never change, Brewers. You were great. You did nothing wrong. You're beautiful. You're perfect. They've won 5 in a row. And they swept the Guardians over the weekend. Great bobblehead on Saturday night. Harry Doyle. I was there with my parents. It was a great time. I saw David Gruber coming out of the bathroom. That's always exciting. Didn't say anything. I smiled at him, and he was like, I know. Yep, I'm going back to my seat, which was perfect. I didn't want to inconvenience him, but that was exciting. I hope you had something that brought you similar excitement this weekend. 608-321-1670 if you'd like to join the show. Would love to have you. We'll get to the phone calls after the first break. You can comment on the live stream. We started live streaming the show last week. I think it's been a blast and a half so far. It seems like it's successful. People are watching and taking advantage of it. Okay, if no one was watching, then I probably wouldn't do it, but I'm glad people are enjoying. It's on my Twitter, @WiscoGrant. It's on the show's Facebook page, and if you look up Wisco Sports Show on YouTube, it's there too. I know it's not like YouTube. It's not the sexiest thing. I'm not trying to build a massive YouTube audience here, but it's nice because like YouTube, you can throw it up on like a smart TV or on a laptop. It's very stable. YouTube is a good place to be able to watch something. I use YouTube for a lot of stuff like that. So it's there. Those 3 platforms. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the live chat as well. I actually want to start with the Brewers because I think we're probably going to stick with the Packers as the show goes along. And I don't like to bounce from topic to topic to topic, although that's not the end of the world. I do try to think, okay, we'll say this, and then we'll move to this topic. We'll probably stay with the Packers for a little while longer. Like I said, the Brewers have won 5 in a row between the Dodgers, the last 2 against the Dodgers, and then the Guardians. And like I said, this is a joke earlier on in the season, but the more that I say it, the more I buy into it, the more seriously I take it. This happens a lot on the show where we start with a bit, with a dumb saying, and then we start to actually like it, and we continue to say it. I started this thing a couple months ago where I would say, I don't think the Brewers are a great team, but they're great at winning games. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the Brewers are that good, but they're really good at winning games, whatever that means. I mean, they split with the Dodgers, which doesn't sound like an overwhelming success, but when you consider how they looked in game 1 and game 2, to come back and to split that series and to get games 3 and 4, and then to sweep the Guardians, who were hot coming in. They'd won 5 in a row, I believe, coming in. Those two teams, the Dodgers and the Guardians, combined 145, 104, both leading their division. And by the way, when I say combined, their records combined 145 wins, 104 losses, both leading their division. The Brewers aren't a great team, but they're really good at winning games. And I said that as a little bit of a joke, a little bit of a backhanded compliment towards the Brewers a couple months ago. And the more that I say it, the more I keep going back to that expression, the more that I think it's actually just a really good way to describe and a really good way to kind of encapsulate this Brewers team. I don't think they're that great. And Pat Murphy said that over and over again, but they're really great at winning games. It's not a diss. It's a compliment. There's really no reason for this team to be 20 games over 500 in mid-August. Again, you do that in late May, in mid-June. Oh, that's one thing. And the Brewers were, I don't remember what their previous high water mark before 20 up, but there were moments in May and in June where they were 15 over, some really good number. And then they had a little bit of a swoon in some parts of June. And then in July is really when they started to struggle and they were losing series. And St. Louis put a little bit of a charge on. And we had a moment where we're like, oh, the Pirates. We had a little bit of a moment where look at the Reds. But the Cardinals, we kind of always figured to be the team, and now they've completely fallen off the table too. The Brewers, after things got tight in late July, have now pulled away again. And now they're up on the division 11 games. In mid-August, again, it's one thing to be 20 over in May or June. It's another to do it in August when you've played 2/3 of your schedule. It's just really impressive. It's really, really, really impressive. And when I say they're not a great team, but they're great at winning games, it's a compliment. It's a testament to Pat Murphy for his vision and his message and the way that he kind of sees this team and leads this team. And I know that that's not quantifiable by stats. I like the way that Tim Allen says it on the postgame show. He's like, that's t-shirt stuff. That's bumper sticker stuff. I know that that's bumper sticker t-shirt stuff, but I think it's true with Pat Murphy. I mean, how could you deny it? How could you look at the Brewers and be like, Pat Murphy's just a manager? Well, watch his team. Why are they winning then? It's got to be something with Murphy and his mojo. And yeah, lots of guys are having really good seasons, but this is the coaching staff. Doesn't Murphy and his attitude and his approach, he gets credit for that, right? On Thursday, the Brewers were coming off 2 straight wins over the Dodgers. We should be celebrating. We should be jumping for joy. And on some level we were, but I got on the air Thursday afternoon and I'm like, guys, I'm kind of annoyed. I'm not going to lie. I don't think I can wave pom-poms like I think you all want me to. I'm annoyed. All of the base running gaffes and bad at bats and just everything that happened between that Wednesday night and Thursday game against the Dodgers. The Dodgers were begging for the Brewers to take those games. And the Brewers like, no, we're begging you back to keep the game. We don't want him. Both teams were trying their hardest to lose those games. And while the Brewers won, I'm like, my God, I need a cigarette. I was annoyed. I was exhausted. The Brewers just swept Cleveland. Savali and Ray were both excellent. That was Aaron Savali's best performance as a Brewer. Colin Ray, that's near the top. I know he had a game earlier this year where he went longer, but he had a no-hitter, I believe, into the 6th, or at least late into the 5th, late into the 5th, late into the 6th. Doesn't matter. Both S-tier starts from those guys. Freddie was solid. I don't know that he was lights out ace Freddie, but he did the job, which I think for this Brewers team is probably more important, especially if you ask Pat Murphy. The bullpen was excellent throughout. Right? Everyone had their moment. Devin Williams looks incredible. Payamps is so back, by the way. Jared Koenig got the save yesterday, but was maybe even more impressive on Saturday. Just comes in and gasses 3 straight hitters. Good contact hitters, too. Cleveland's a tough lineup to strike out, to rack up strikeouts. So that part of the series was impressive, but they scored runs in 7 of the 27 innings, and they only scored multiple runs in 1 inning. of the entire series, and it was the first inning of game 1 when Willy Adames hit a homer. Other than that, it was one run here, one run there, one run there. It wasn't the most explosive, engaging series ever from an offensive perspective. They kind of did the bare minimum Saturday and Sunday. And yet, again, I'm finding ways to knock and to needle this team. They're 20 games over 500. Their record and where they sit in the standings, it's impeachable. Right? And you could say, well, the division is weak. Well, they lead it by 11 games. They're not clinging to life over a bad division by a game and a half. They're up by almost a dozen games. Sure, the division is bad. That's why they're so much better than everyone else. That's why they're running away with it, right? You just can't argue with 20 over on August 9th. You just can't. And if you really want to be negative, and I get a lot of Brewers fans do, it's kind of part of the nihilist part of Brewers fandom, and it's a fun part of the fandom. I like taking part in it too. Well, they're not the Phillies. They're not the Dodgers. Okay, sure. Did we think that was on the board when we came into the season? No, of course not. This is better than any realistic best case scenario that we had coming into this year. They're never going to be the Dodgers. I keep saying this, we're never going to come into a Brewers season and be like, this is the year where their roster is going to stack up with the Dodgers. That year's never happening. So if the Brewers not being on the same level of the Dodgers is going to keep you from enjoying a season and buying in on some level to a season, well, then just stop being a fan. Because you're never going to get that. I'm not telling you you're a bad fan or you're doing it wrong, but if that's the bar that you're setting for yourself, you need to recalibrate. Because even if the Brewers were to throw this bites of the apple thing out the window and they go in on a strategy of building it up, tearing it down, building it up, even the most build up version of the Brewers is never matching what the Dodgers are doing. We just can't judge this team that way. I'm pleased as punch. They're right on the heels of the Phillies and the Dodgers. Who knows? Maybe they overtake the Phillies and the Dodgers. But at the very worst, this bullpen is really stacking up. They optioned Peguero today. McGill should be coming back. Hudson looked great. Koenig, Williams. This team is taking shape. And it's a bummer to not have Yelich. But with Contreras and Adames, who knows what Hoskins can give you in a small sample, what Churio's doing, this is the type of team that the Brewers think about when they're we just need to get in and see what can happen. This team qualifies, okay? This team fits. And again, if you are waiting for the Brewers team that stacks up with the Dodgers and the Phillies, stacks up with those rosters, that team's never coming, okay? So we need to view them a little bit differently. This team has far and away blown any reasonable expectations out of the water this year. I'm still not really sure how they're doing it. I think it's a lot of Murphy. Guys are performing. Guys are having career years all at once, which is how you win a lot of games as a baseball team. But I'm going to play you some audio from MLB Network earlier today. Lauren Shahidi was talking about it. She's like, the Brewers kind of take on the life of Pat Murphy. The Brewers kind of take on the personality of Pat Murphy. Yeah, and I don't understand it because that's bumper sticker stuff. That's T-shirt stuff. But it seems to be how this team clicks. So we'll talk more about them as the show goes on. If you have thoughts to share on the Brewers, calls or texts, I'll get to those. Couple thoughts on the Packers before we take our first break. They played a football game last night. They participated in a game of some level of quality. The Broncos played their ones, and the Packers did not. And by the way, I saw a lot of Packers fans on Twitter last night. Well, our ones aren't out there. Oh my goodness, who cares? Everyone was complaining, oh, Broncos fans are feeling pretty high right now, beating up on some backups. Are we Did I miss it? Were we beefing with Broncos fans on Twitter last night? I'm never going to tell you how to fan, but get close here. We don't need Twitter fan bases going back and forth during a preseason game. Well, our ones aren't even out there. Even if they were, it doesn't matter at all in any way. Now, it wasn't pretty. And I suppose we could get into a discussion about, well, did the Packers show enough effort? And it doesn't matter if you're a second or a third stringer. That display still isn't acceptable. Oh, okay. But then we're really getting into the weeds talking about a preseason game, and I don't know that we need to do that. Based on what I read from the experts and my very limited knowledge, and eye test supports this. It's like they ran 4 things all night. It never really looked like they tried anything defensively. They just kind of rolled the helmets out there. On offense, it's slant, flat, slant, flat. If the Packers coaches last night really wanted their backups to succeed, even against Denver's first stringers, I think they could have tried a little harder. I personally don't care that they didn't at all. This is fine. Well, 27-2, that's an unacceptable score. Whatever. I'm just glad it's done. I'm just glad I don't have to watch it anymore. It's fine. I wasn't expecting last night's Packers game to power 2 hours of content tonight. Like, I wasn't relying on last night's Packer game to be like, we need stuff to talk about tomorrow. We need stuff to talk about because the Brewers are giving us plenty to talk about. And we can have plenty of Packers conversations that aren't contingent on the result of a preseason game, right? I was not expecting that game to feed families all week on Sports Talk Radio. 3 things were on my list going into last night. Things that I was looking for, players that I was watching. The 3 things that were on my list: backup tackle, options for backup tackle, swing tackle. That's one thing that I was watching. Backup quarterback, obviously. With what other option did we have? It's not like we could watch the starters, so I was interested to see Pratt and interested to see the Penn State quarterback Clifford. I don't know why I brain farted there. So I was interested in backup tackle, backup quarterback, and kicker. And I think we went 0 for 3 with those 3 things. Like, all the backup tackles looked bad. Both quarterbacks looked bad. Greg Joseph attempted 1 kick, and he shanked it badly. So I guess that was a bummer. I was hoping to get some resolution or some information at least on one of those 3 things. Not all 3. I'm not greedy. I would have liked 1, and I got 0. I got nothing, and I'll like it. So we have no more optimism. We have no more clarity on backup tackle, on backup quarterback, or kicker. I don't really want to talk about the kicker today. I'll talk about backup tackle, talk about backup quarterback. Talked a little bit with Pete Doherty earlier today. You're going to hear some of that conversation. I had to fill in for Bill for like a half hour today because some construction crew like blew up a power line on his street when they were working, and his power went out for a little bit. And it's right when Pete was coming on. So I'm like, well, I'll interview Pete, I guess. And Pete was a good sport about it, because I texted him like 2 minutes before I called him. I was like, hey, Bill just disconnected. Do you mind doing it with me? So that's, by the way, an interview that I'm comfortable replaying because I'm the one who did it. I didn't just sit here and listen to Bill do it. So I asked him about backup tackle and backup quarterback and a couple different things. So we'll get to that conversation at some point tonight. I want to get to some of your calls. 608-321-1670. You can text, call that number, comment on the live stream. I want your thoughts. Packers, Brewers, everything's on the board. We'll get to it next. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Pat Murphy has won. His post-game pressers are just hard-nosed, they're funny, they're witty, and their team, his team is kind of an extension of that. 11-game lead, largest division lead by a mile.
Yes, Pat Murphy's done a terrific job his first year as the manager there in Milwaukee. We know he was the mentor for Craig Counsell, who's now obviously with the rival Cubs, and he is having a great year. I know, he seems like a football coach.
He does, that's perfect.
It works. Very smart guy, terrific with strategy. Look at all the players that they've lost. I mean, they traded Corbin Burns. Devin Williams missed more than half a season. He's an outstanding closer. Lose him, devastating. Overcame that. Christian Yelich is now out. All of the injuries that they've overcome in the small market team, bottom third, payroll, as I said, he's done a terrific job. I mean, he is an easy number one for me.
It's John Heyman and Lauren Shahidi, MLB Network earlier today. We might continue to talk about the Packers. We don't necessarily need to talk about the Brewers. I wanted to play that clip because I referenced it in our opening segment. I think this show is one of the first shows to that take. I'm hearing that a lot now. Like, doesn't the Brewers kind of play with the attitude of Pat Murphy? The Brewers are they kind of personify their manager. I think they've done that since the beginning of the year. The point that I've made is when the Brewers are playing well and they're winning, it's like you can see Pat Murphy's fingerprints all over the team. When they're playing poorly, I think they get away from that a little bit. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So it's not like I own that take. That's not what I'm saying. But it's something we've talked about for a while. When they're playing well, it's like you can see Pat Murphy's fingertips, his breath all over the lineup. John Heyman, the Haymaker, friend of the show, and I love him. Terrific with strategy. That might be a strong word. Competence too weak, terrific's too strong, adequate, adequate, solid. That's what we'll say. Solid at strategy. He's solid at strategy. Terrific is a little too strong, but solid, I can do solid. Pat Murphy. By the way, speaking of strategy, Elvis Peguero has been optioned, partly because I think the Brewers front office just wanted to take the car keys away from Murphy. It's like you can't keep throwing this guy out there when there's runners on base. 608-321-1670. Let's take a call or two. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, it's awesome to hear how important a backup can be. Whether, your quarterback has his collarbone driven into the ground and you ended up losing him for a bunch of time, or the construction crew blows out a power line and the backup needs to step in. Sounds like you were ready to go when called upon.
You know what's funny is I was not ready to go, and I would not tell this to Bill. I had a little bit of a headache. I am locked into varying degrees during the 4 hours of Bill's show. I was not locked in. In fact, I was reading the Wikipedia for Alien, what's the new one? Romulus? Prometheus, I think is what I was reading, because I haven't seen any of the movies, and I'm curious. And I was through the second paragraph of the plot when his feed cut out, and I was not prepared at all. That's as least prepared as I've ever been to all of the sudden be hosting Sports Talk Radio.
So it sounds like you were about as prepared as the Packers' second and third strings were to take the field in one of their last opportunities to really make an impact on an NFL roster.
Yes.
Is that right?
I'd say that's a good tangent by you, or a good segue. Yes.
Well, we try. And there's a couple things that you said in the open that kind of stuck out to me. And I do think, it's kind of, again, being tangential between, Pat Murphy and this Packers staff, because I agree with you. Watching that game, it looked like the coaches really dumbed things down, simplified, kind of threw in the towel, said, yeah, it's a preseason game. We'll go out there and we'll make it really simple. Let's just see what these guys can do. And I'm a firm believer that whether you're a manager in the workplace, a coach on the field, whatever it is, if your team takes on persona, that's an ultimate sign of leadership, right? I mean, Pat Murphy with his guys, like they go out there, they're playing with the character of Pat Murphy. Now you flip that around and you look at this Packers staff. I don't know how you can come out in a press conference and say, no, I really wish these guys had a lot more fire on them. I really wish they gave them their best effort. And I'm sitting here thinking, like you, did the coaches really put their best effort, right? How can you sit there and say, well, these players got to give us more. They got to really put it out there more if we're just mailing it in and calling vanilla plays and not giving these players any reason to, put more into it, particularly thinking about guys that are probably safe, right? So in that first quarter, obviously it was starters versus backups, right? But at the same time, we all know the name Kingsley Enagbare.
Yeah.
Right? We know Carl Brooks. We know
not
a lot of
not
guys
starters, but guys who should play and probably play a good amount throughout the regular season. Yeah.
And guys who started a lot of games last year when you're thinking about Corey Ballantyne in there, right?
Yep.
So these are guys who have played a lot for the Packers. And so for the, even the commentators are like, well, there's not a lot of expectations. This team does not have a fire lit under them. And what I was disappointed by, I'm not expecting greatness, right? I don't care about the final result.
Well, I mean, you carry the G on your helmet. You should carry greatness everywhere that you go. What are you talking about? As an owner, I feel that way.
And that's how Baltimore carries themselves, right?
Well,
they didn't lose a preseason game for like 10 years. That's how 49ers carry themselves when their team's absolutely going crazy on the sidelines in the fourth quarter and when Tanner Mordecai's out there slinging the rock. And that's how these other programs that have consistently had success. And so to see the Packers go out there after hearing a whole offseason of, yeah, we kind of, we like these guys. We're letting them play fast. We're letting them play free. Yeah, we're giving veterans day off. And then all of a sudden you get to the, you fly out to Denver for a week and you just get your teeth kicked in by a team that sucked last year in practice. And then you show up to the game and the backups look like that. Grant, I'm not saying it's a red flag. I'm just saying this is something I'd like to see the coaching staff, and it sounds like they're trying to. I'd like to see them correct this real quick because you can't have a laissez-faire offseason, giving extra days off to the starters. You can't have, everything's all sunshine and dandelions. We're excited to see this install. Everybody looks like they're in incredible shape. And then go out to Denver, and the entire week, all we're hearing from the beat is, well, that didn't look good in practice. Well, that didn't look good. And then you get to the preseason game, and we saw what we saw last night. So not panicking, nothing there, but a trend that we don't want to see continue, certainly.
So I would agree with you. I think looking at this last week holistically is probably a good way to go about it. Well, actually, hold on. The correct, if we were being 100% honest, the correct way to go about this preseason game and this discussion is to not have it because it mostly doesn't matter and who cares. But we have a show to do today. We talk every night. We need to talk about this. I think looking at the beginning of joint practices last week all the way through Sunday, you gotta remember the progression, right? Because a lot of times when the Packers in a regular season game, the games that matter, when they get blown out and Matt LaFleur goes to the podium and starts talking, you hear things like, well, going back to last Wednesday, I thought this, and at practice, I saw that. Like, we start to think of the game not just as a reflection and a result based on performance on Sunday, but everything leading up to it. It's just a weird set of events, right? Matt LaFleur said long before they ever traveled out to Denver, well, the starters aren't going to play. So there's naturally a feet taken off the gas at that point in time, right? Like, here's an example. I can speak to this. I'm sure on some level you can at your job. Have you ever gone into work knowing that, yes, I'm going to work, but I don't have to do the main thing? Like, there's days where I've gone into work knowing for one reason or another, my show's not on the air. So I go into work like, what, this doesn't count. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'll fill out some forms and do all the other little BS things that I have to do every day, but without having to do a show. Like, this doesn't matter. This is just a day where I can go in and F around. And it changes your mindset, right? And if my boss is listening, I still execute my other duties to the best of my ability, but it's a mindset thing, right? So I think Matt LaFleur early last week basically saying, well, the starters aren't going to play. Well, everyone relaxes a little bit. And then you're in Denver with the altitude. And if you're not familiar with what Denver's like in August, it's hot as hell. It is hot. And the sun is bright. Like, you feel it. Out there in the west, in the Wild West, the sun is just hotter. I don't know if it's the elevation. I mean, you're closer to the sun. I'm no scientist. I'm sure they're a mile high. Imagine being a mile closer to the sun. It's got to be significant on some level, right? But the air's thinner. The sky is bigger. There's less stuff. There's fewer trees. You're just getting more of it. It's hot. It's dry, the altitude. So there's probably a lot of different factors going into this game. I think it's probably in the best interest of Matt LaFleur and the Packers to just flush it. I don't know that they need to spend time. Well, next year when we do joint practices, we're going to want to do this, that, and the other thing differently. Like, no, you got your reps. And what's nice, and Bill and I talked about this earlier today, silver lining for a bad performance in game 2 is now Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff get to follow and get to see how guys respond next week. And I think it would be good if Jeff Hafley and Matt LaFleur and Adam Stenavich hit some of these backups and these young players with maybe a little bit more. Like, let's give them a little bit more other than slant, flat. And on defense, just lining up in base. Let's just throw a couple things at them and see how they respond after a bad performance and after they got their lunch taken. Let's see how those guys respond and bounce back. I think that's a worthwhile thing for this team. I think that's a worthwhile progression to go through for these young players and a worthwhile progression to follow and to monitor and to observe for the coaches. So I think we need to look at more than just the game. I mean, like I said at the beginning, if it were up to me, none of this would matter. We wouldn't spend time on this, but this is sports talk radio. This is what we do. So going all the way back to last week, thinking of the mindset of those players, knowing, well, the starters aren't going to play. I mean, at that moment in time, they don't check out, but a lot of the stress is removed. It's like going into a work week where you don't work on Thursday and Friday. Like Tuesday just it doesn't feel the same, right? So when Matt LaFleur comes out, I heard, I don't remember who it was. I was spinning the dial and listening to lots of different sports talk shows on my way in today, as I do. I listen to Ebo in the morning, of course, but I keep an ear on our competitors. And someone made the point. I thought it was a good one. I truly don't remember who it was. It's not like I'm trying to discredit a competing radio station here. I don't remember. It would have been interesting if Matt LaFleur, when asked last weekend, hey, are you going to play starters next weekend? If he said, we'll see. We'll see. I want to see how they practice this week. The starters probably would have doubted they would have played, but we wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have been able to. You wouldn't have been able to completely slack off and kind of go soft going into Sunday's game, right? Just some thoughts. None of these thoughts are the most important thoughts in the world. None of this analysis is groundbreaking. It's a preseason game, but it happened last night. We have a show to do today, so we're going to talk about it. 608-321-1670. We'll get to some of your texts when we come back. If you have thoughts on the Packers or the Brewers, whatever, we can go back and forth today. It's the Wisco Sports Show. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
You know, I think I was hoping that our guys would come out with more strain, effort, grit after kind of getting humbled the other day in practice, and then to have it happen again, not where we want to be. And I think it's a good lesson for our guys in terms of it doesn't matter who's out there. If you don't put your best foot forward each and every time you go out on that field, these things happen to you. So, we're going to have to regroup, take a long, hard look in the mirror, and we got to get better, and we need that urgency from everybody.
That's Matt LaFleur. The caption of that soundbite that Mike Clemens emailed to me is, what was Matt LaFleur looking to get out of that game? And I think it's an interesting caption, and honestly, Mike probably sent it, if I went back and looked at the email, probably sent it at 3 a.m., and Mike probably didn't think long or hard about what he was captioning that soundbite when he sent it to me. He was probably just sending it out. He didn't think about it. But it got me thinking, what was Matt LaFleur looking to get out of that game? Because as I mentioned kind of in passing in our first segment, Vagabond John agreed. I also saw other Packer people mentioning this last night and today. You know, after I watched it 2 or 3 times, I really noticed it didn't really look like they were trying to be inventive. Didn't really look like they were trying to scheme up many freebies for Michael Pratt, who I keep accidentally calling Cooper Pratt, who's a Brewer, so I'm sorry if I do that, but it's Michael Pratt and Sean Clifford. It didn't seem like they schemed up a lot of freebies. It was slant, flat, halfback dive, slant. And don't get me wrong, they could have executed those slants and flats better. But if it was really Matt LaFleur's goal last night to see something sexy from Pratt or to see something sexy from Clifford, it could have tried a little harder. So I think it's a good question and a good idea to keep on our mind. Like, what were they trying to get out of last night? Were they just trying to get in and out of there healthy? If so, fine. Again, if I didn't host a 2-hour sports talk radio show, I wouldn't be thinking this long and hard about a preseason game. In fact, I host a show, and I'm not thinking that long and hard about a preseason game. You know what I mean? I don't know. I wanted to see backup tackle, fart noise, right? I wanted to see backup quarterback, jerk off motion. Like, we just got nothing. We got absolutely nothing. Kicker, terrible. Missed the one kick they got. So kind of an over, kind of a waste of time, which is why by the fourth quarter, I'm like, I'll keep it on, but I'm not building the waning moments of my weekend around this. I refuse. 608-321-1670. Let's take another call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
I thought I'd call in because I want to get your text line droolers going.
Yes.
About what I'm going to say.
Sure. We have a lack of topics today. Let's do that. Pete Monona.
Yeah, well, Well, I went to Thursday game and then Sunday game, and both of them were interesting in that I mean I usually get up and get something to eat, go to the bathroom, but I sat there the entire game and watched because it was sort of competitive, but not particularly. Uh, it, they weren't particularly well played, but I really was looking forward to Sunday's game because they celebrated 50 years of Robin Yount, and then they played for the Rust Belt championship, Cleveland and Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the 10 well the Cubs don't have and the White Sox don't legitimately have it, but all the other teams can whine about their failures constantly because they don't get a lot of money from television. And so I thought that this was equal match. They were both in first place, and they gave out an interesting trophy. It was like a guy with he had a hard hat, and it was kind of pulled down over his head, and he had an empty tool belt, and he sort of had a tear in his eye. And after the game, they presented that trophy to the Brewers, and it was a big moment, and the game was only 2 hours long. That was like I've been going to baseball game since 55 years. That's the shortest game I've ever been in.
Saturday night, we were there, and I think it was done by 9:30. Yeah, like it was done, both of the games. There wasn't a lot of scoring this weekend, Pete. Like even Friday night, 3 of those runs came on a 3-run homer in the first. It was a pretty station-to-station series.
And and unlike you, I'm not giving this particular manager any more credit than anybody else. I mean, if you want to hang on to that because you're mad that your manager that you idolize went to the Cubs. Oh, okay.
I haven't brought that up in forever, Pete. I haven't brought that. I don't think this Brewers team is that talented. I think they're fine, but I don't think they're that talented. There needs to be some mojo. There needs to be some reason that they're 20 over. And I'm not saying Pat Murphy is like worth 20 wins. I'm saying there's something with his approach and personality that's adding to this team. That's all.
I mean, they're amazing because with the injuries they've had, and to pitching and to their everyday lineup, they are amazing. I mean, that's why I keep going to see them. I'm going to see them 3 more times, this year, and then sometime in the playoffs. I'm hoping they can get that second spot so that they can get a bye into the second round, because that way there may be a lot of better teams that get knocked off. They'll get a better chance. But it's amazing because I mean offensively I really don't know how they do it. But
that's what I'm saying. There's got to be some. It is a fun combination, Pete, and you've been going to games forever. It's a fun combination of little hit and run, a little double steal, put the ball in play, but then they can also hit homers. Like they can do a little bit of both.
Contreras will hit a home run, or their shortstop will strike go 0 for 12, and then he'll hit a 3-run homer.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they win. I don't know how well that does in a short series. So anyway, that's I just wanted to congratulate. Oh, wait a minute, I want to give a shout out because that Rust Belt Trophy is presented by 5 and Below. So, they need to have a credit for sponsoring that. But that's really neat. And who was calling up about the Packers saying, well, I don't want to panic, but who he kept saying that?
Vagabond John? He's the only other caller we've had so far.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, he's panicked because he kept bringing it up. Yeah, he's panicked.
If you keep saying I don't want to panic, you're saying that he's panicking. Okay.
But the Brewers keep turning up the heat, and we'll see you in October.
Well, you said, Pete, and that was actually, I didn't know where you were going with that call. I'm thrilled with that call because I thought you were going to get into some, you have this axe to grind, and I don't think it's a bad axe. It's just you wield this axe at times when it's not expected. You have some axe to grind with the finances of baseball in Milwaukee, and that's a whole chestnut that most days I prefer to avoid opening. There's some days where we're talking about it, and then Pete, it's like, yes. But then there's other days where it's like, is Chris Middleton, can he stay healthy? And then the phone will ring, and it's you saying that the Brewers should move to Nashville because of finances. And I'm like, Pete, not today. It's no time. I thought that was actually a great breakdown of this weekend series. The games, especially Saturday and Sunday, were fast. They're very station to station. I don't know how they're winning. You said, Pete, you don't know how they're winning, and that's why I look at Murphy. I don't know how they're winning all these games using 2 outfield spots on Garrett Mitchell and Sal Frelick. And Garrett Mitchell has been better this year than I thought he would be since coming back. And he stayed healthy. Knock on wood. And by the way, it's not like Garrett Mitchell's been that good. I just don't really think he profiles to be that great of a player, at least this version. It's not to say that he can't adjust. It's not to say that he can't, like we have Major League Baseball's version of Josh Allen on our team. Like Josh Allen was a disaster his rookie year, and he completely reinvented himself as a passer, got way more accurate. We have Bryce Terang on our team. Trust me, I've seen things. I'm never leaving a player for dead when they're young after year 1 or year 2 ever again, especially if injuries are involved, like they have been with Garrett Mitchell. I don't know how they're winning consistently, let alone winning 5 in a row between the Dodgers and the Guardians when they're using 2 outfield spots on Garrett Mitchell and Sal Frelick. Garrett Mitchell will make 15 straight outs. He'll strike out 15 times in 25 at bats. Sal Frelick hasn't hit a ball hard since Flag Day. That's 2 spots. And the third spot, he's freaking 20 years old. Gestures at everything. I don't know. Joey Ortiz has been meh, and they basically go if Willie Adames and William Contreras can hit a couple bombs. And Pete, you said, I don't know how it plays in a short series. Nobody knows how any team will play in a short series. That's why short series are such a jacked up thing. And that's why I actually listened to J.R. Radcliffe make a positive point about the Brewers. And I'm not saying that he's negative, but he's been skeptical all year on Microbrew podcast, which I very much enjoy because I enjoy J.R. I like listening to him, but he's like, this team is not as good as, like, they're not a 20 game over 500. They're not a team that should be on the heels of the Dodgers and the Phillies. But at some point you get to mid-August, you throw your hands up. JR was talking about, like, not having Christian Yelich hurts them, but they've secured this division. And his point was basically in a 3-game series, Blake Perkins has as good a chance as Christian Yelich of having 5 hot at-bats. You know what I mean? Like, you get in a short series, you don't know what can happen. That's the point. That's why the Brewers are going about their business this way. 608-321-1670. Let's take another call before we take our last break of the hour. Wisco Sports Show. Hello, who's this?
Hey, even I went to the damn Brewer game yesterday.
Dave, I was in section. I was on your nice level with the air conditioned concourse. I think we were in section 316. Where were you yesterday?
Oh, it was 335 behind home plate. I've never gone down to the seats because I always sit up in the air conditioning because I hate. There was like 20 customers.
I feel you.
But actually, when I went down to the seats. I got to tell you, man, for a fat guy, for people that are going down there, if you're big, those are comfortable seats in them. That club. Well, my God, you got plenty of butt room, and your back's high enough. Got no leg room. But the one thing I noticed about customer service there, you get that app and order your food. It's there free fast. Well, I give you a tip, but fast and hot in about 10 minutes. So to all you suckers that were standing in line, that'll teach you. I just pulled out the app. 10 minutes, all of our crap was there. But
interesting.
No, but the sad thing was, you probably walked right by me too, knowing you and didn't.
No, I wasn't. Okay, well, first of all, we were there on different days. Second of all, Dave, if I saw you, I would come say hello.
Oh, that's right. You were there on Saturday.
Yeah, we were there on the same day.
Yeah, I was there Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
But weren't you there on Sunday with the? You were there on Saturday, weren't you?
I was there on Saturday night. Yes.
Yeah, I was there yesterday, Sunday.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, one thing about that stadium, though, if they get into a series, they had to keep that roof closed. I don't care if it's 75 and sunshine.
Neither do they. They had it closed yesterday. It was beautiful outside. What the hell was going on?
But that place gets loud.
Mm-hmm.
I sat down when the leadoff hitter, whoever that clown was,
Terang hit a triple. Yep.
Yeah, he's a clown.
Why is he a clown?
Because he's for the Brewers. I hate Brewers.
Well, okay. Never mind. Dumb question.
But when he hit that, it's like I was telling one of our customers going, "Damn, this place in here is loud," and the customer service down there in facilities. Now Milwaukee's got it pretty good. They got to keep that roof closed because, man, it was less than loud and the fans but pretty hard to handle when you get 2 hot dogs and a Diet Coke for $26. That one was a little tough.
Is that, I guess that's the middle of the road. That's about what I'd expect to pay, which is too bad, but like they probably could charge a lot more.
I mean, you have to expect it, but no, but I just had a call. You guys talking with the Brewers and the last joker talking about Pat Murphy. It is because of Pat Murphy. There's 20 games there, Pete from Clownland.
You guys live in the same state. You're both from Monona. You live in the same place.
He's an idiot.
I know you guys have a rivalry. Yeah.
I know. But you don't win 20 games if you're manager. I mean, look at Murphy. You think you'd be 20? Okay, ask yourself. If you had the Clown Prince of Blank show out of Chicago, would you be 20 games up?
Clownsel?
Nope.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think this Brewers team would probably be fine. It's not something I thought about. If Counsell was managing this Brewers team, what the difference would be.
They got a lot of good young talent for many, many controllable years. You got Colin Ray, who's having a year of a lifetime. He's 34 years old. This will be the only year he ever does this. Take advantage of it. The Brewers got Williams back. Hey,
before I let you go, because I do have to go to a break. I got about 30 seconds. I want your take.
All right.
I heard on 670 The Score this morning for Bruce Levine. You know who that is, covers the Cubs and the White Sox.
He's an idiot.
Okay. He reported today that the number one interest for the Cubs this offseason is going to be bringing in Corbin Burns. What do you have to say about that?
That's not what got him 25 blown saves this year.
I'm just saying. I have the audio from he was on Mully and Haw earlier today. I want to play it.
I listen to him every Saturday morning. Yeah, sure, it'd be nice to have him, but I'd rather have two guys in the middle of the order and get us two bullpen pieces. You'll win the World Series. We don't need another top starter. The Cubs are loaded with starting pitching, some of the best. You're going to spend $35-40 million on him, and what did we lose? 25 blowing saves. Think about that. 25 blown saves, 50 games in the standings.
I have enjoyed every single one, Dave. It was nice to chat. I do have to run because I'm up against it. I'm woefully late for a break. I see you mostly tweeting about politics these days, and I get it. It's an election year. It's a big year for you, but I appreciate you taking a break from your political commentary and just talking baseball. You and Pete have a good rivalry. The yin and yang from the city of Monona. I enjoy you both. Let's take a 3-minute break. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 1, the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. A privilege always to speak with Dave from Monona. We get Dave and Pete from Monona back to back. That's rare. That's like seeing a cycle. That's like going to the ballpark and seeing a cycle or a no-hitter. I mean, if you're listening live, consider yourselves lucky. Bart texts in and says, quote, "Everyone is an idiot, Dave from Monona." Well, yeah. My favorite part of that conversation, and it's so hard to pick one because I enjoyed the whole thing, but is when I said, "Hey, Dave, you know Bruce Levine, 670. He goes, "Yeah, he's an idiot." And I said, "What he was saying the other day," and Dave goes, "Yeah, I was listening to him Saturday." Oh, he's an idiot. I mean, I listen to him every Saturday morning, but what a clown. My favorite thing about Dave, if you're newer to the show, Dave referred to Craig Counsell as Craig Clownsell for years. Years before then he changed teams to go manage Dave's Cubs. So Dave has been anti-Counsell long before a lot of other Cubs fans went that way when the team started losing this year. Let's take a 2-minute break. We'll get an update from Zach Heilprin. We'll reset the show. I do want to play you that Bruce Levine audio about how they're going to target Corbin Burns because I think it's interesting. A lot more interesting than what the Packers did last night. And if you disagree, I'm sorry. That game sucked. Hour 2 next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the battle to see who's going to be backing up Jordan Love this year continued last night. The returns were not great as the Packers lost 27-2 at Denver in preseason game number 2. Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt combined to go 16 for 26 for 80 yards and an interception. Coach Matt LaFleur knows it wasn't pretty, but he also wasn't going to lay all the blame at the feet of the two quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the production kind of speaks for it, but I think it wasn't just on them. I mean, it's everybody. It's all 11. We got to block better up front. We got to finish runs better. We had a couple drops. So I think it's just collectively all 11 have got to be better in order for us to have any success offensively.
Packers sat 31 players, including most of their established starters. LaFleur was unsure if that would change in the preseason finale against the Ravens, though the performance last night has him second thinking sitting guys. The team will hold a joint practice with Baltimore on Thursday before finishing out the preseason on Saturday. Turn to the Badgers. They're just 11 days out from the start of their season against Western Michigan. Coach Luke Fickell said on Saturday that a shift from fall camp to focusing on game 1 would happen this week.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
When a company only does business in Wisconsin, that's Wisconsin Strong. Rural Mutual provides all lines of insurance, including commercial, farm, home, and auto. And your premiums stay right here to keep Wisconsin strong. Local agents, local underwriters, local claims adjusters.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, it's a travel day for the Brewers. They are making their way to St. Louis, where they're going to open up a series tomorrow night. Milwaukee coming off a sweep of Cleveland that has their lead in the NL Central, sitting at 11 games on the Cardinals. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heilprin.
Well, that was a long night. I was hoping that our guys would come out with more strain, effort, grit after kind of getting humbled the other day in practice, and then to have it happen again, not where we want to be. And I think it's a good lesson for our guys.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
The more I think about it, I'm unsure of what Matt LaFleur and the Packers were trying to accomplish last night. They could have tried a little bit harder schematically. I understand you don't want to show your hand in the preseason. Vanilla is everyone's favorite word this time of year. Vanilla is approaching the same territory of the word moist, where it's like, I don't like, it's like you use it just to use it. I don't like it. Well, we know everything's vanilla. Can we just call it boring or plain or any other word? Vanilla is a flavor. It's a taste. It's not a word we should use to describe football scheme. Anyways, it's the voice of Matt LaFleur last night after the game. Basically came to the podium and was like, sorry you all flew out to Denver to watch that. Sorry you all hooked up your rabbit ears at home to watch that. It was bad. We can continue to talk about that. We can continue to talk about the Brewers as well. Breaking news of today, Elvis Peguero has been optioned. Elvis Peguero's not bad. He's fine. He's not elite. He's not bad. You just can't use him with runners on base, which Pat Murphy seemed just so intent on doing. So the Brewers front office, and they got to make room too, and Peguero's got options. So it makes sense. It's not like they completely 100% totally optioned him just so Pat Murphy couldn't use him with runners on. Small side benefit. Be lying if Matt Arnold didn't at least bring it up in their meeting when deciding when to, and how to do this and how to send him down. 608-321-1670. Rave reviews as always for the call from Dave from Monona. Badger Bloody Reviews tweets in at Wisco Grant, says, next time you allow Dave from Monona to disgrace your show, tell that effing coward piece of human garbage to unblock me. Make a heck of a case, Badger Bloody. I'll pass it along. Dave, if you're listening, unblock Badger Bloodies on Twitter at Badger Bloodies. Thank you for the tweet at Wisco Grant. I want to play you this bit of audio. This is Bruce Levine on 670 The Score talking about, well, it's not like he came on The Score earlier today with Mully and Ha just to talk about what the Cubs want to do in the offseason. It just came up. They were talking about the shortcomings of the Cubs. And basically, I think the conversation was, could they still make a run at the wild card? And is their season really dead? Because mathematically, they're far from out of it. And they got into a longer conversation about, well, they're weak here and they're weak there. And this is an area that they're going to need to improve. And Bruce Levine very casually mentions that, well, their number one focus I've heard this offseason is Corbin Burns in free agency. He's with the Orioles right now, set to hit free agency. So let's listen to that. I think this is one of my favorite stories of the day. I know it's nothing to do with our football team and the Packers that played last night. The Brewers, who are coming off a sweep over the Guardians, they've won 5 straight. This fascinates me. Here's Bruce Levine, 670 The Score earlier today.
If Tom Ricketts lets Jed Hoyer, presumably Jed Hoyer, spend more money next year, go way over the cap, maybe they're going to be able to buy somebody out there. But I hear the number one priority for the Cubs is going to be Corbin Burns of the Baltimore Orioles. I think that the old adage, there's an old adage in baseball, if you need another hitter, go out and get the best pitcher. Okay. That is, it's an odd statement, but it's been made before that pitching is still 80% of the game. Now, in the case of the Cubs this year, that really hasn't been the case. It hasn't really shown up as a reason to be able to get over 500.
So there's like a million things I want to pick apart there. Before we talk about the possibility of Burns going to the Cubs, which I almost want to see happen just for the content, because he would play against the Brewers. He would be rejoined with his former manager, Craig Counsell. And I want to talk about that. Can we revisit what he said in the middle there? And I don't remember where it is. I'm just going to guess with my mouse here and hope that I click in the right spot.
Corbin Burns of the Baltimore Orioles. I think that
here it is.
The old adage, there's an old adage in baseball. If you need another hitter, go out and get the best pitcher.
So I Googled that earlier today. If that's an old adage, it's so old, it's pre-internet, because I couldn't find it anywhere. If you need another hitter, go out and get the best pitcher.
The old adage, there's an old adage in baseball. If you need another hitter, go out and get the best pitcher.
Far from me to tell Bruce Levine how to do his job. I've just never heard that before. And I'm not sure that it makes sense. If you need another hitter, go out and get the best pitcher. It's like, well, sure. The thing about the Cubs is they're paying so much for their starting pitching, or they have good starting pitching already. Like Steele is excellent, but he's not making that much. Tyone is both good, but he's also making a good amount. He's making $18 million a year. Now, $18 million a year will be nothing compared to what Corbin Burns might get. Garrett Cole has 36 a year. Jacob deGrom has 40 a year. I would be shocked if Burns gets those numbers, but could he get 30 to 35, upper 30s? He might get 40. I don't know. Is that how the Cubs want to spend their money? And again, Bruce Levine said in this interview, it's like, well, if Tom Ricketts lets Jed Hoyer go out and spend, like that's at the beginning. Listen to that one more time.
If Tom Ricketts lets Jed Hoyer, presumably Jed Hoyer, spend more money next year,
they're spending so much already. It's not like they went cheap on this team. They gave almost $10 million to a reliever. That's not the problem. The problem is the reliever has sucked. Hector Neris hasn't been any good. So that's just an incredible 50 seconds. I could do the whole show on that soundbite, the whole 2 hours, do the whole thing on that. I hope the Cubs do it. I hope the Yankees re-sign Juan Soto to a pile. Juan Soto comes off the board, and the Cubs, who are certainly, I bet, want to go big sea fishing or big game hunting, deep sea fishing, whatever. They want a star. I hope they strike out on all the offensive stars, to use a baseball term. And I hope they throw a bag at Corbin Burns. Because I would their team be any better or worse this year with Corbin Burns on it? I think they'd be about the same. Craig Counsell's gone to the podium after every single one of these games. Like, man, we didn't, I think we had, we only got 4 runners into scoring position. Just a quiet night offensively. You're not gonna win a lot of ball games like that. It's like, how does Corbin Burns help that? I mean, I love it. I'm here for it. I think it would be tremendous content. We could make so many arbitration jokes. We could make jokes. We could bring back the making of the bed jokes. That's a genre of Brewers humor that we haven't been able to tap into in a while. I mean, it would be a great spot for Corbin Burns. His biggest weakness is performing in the playoffs, and it won't be an issue in Chicago because they don't look at him. They're behind by almost a dozen games in the division. That's not going to be a concern for him in Chicago. 608-321-1670. We don't need to talk about this. I just thought it was hilarious. And some of the comments he made in there, I just thought were funny. So we can get back into the Packers, the Brewers, or whatever. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Clemhead Mike.
Clemhead. Hey, what's going on?
I missed the first hour of the show. We were out doing stuff. And so I missed the last hour of Bill's show. I missed the first hour of your show, so I'm maybe a little behind. But what did I tell you last week? After the first 2 games of the Dodgers series, I said, Grant, there's a lot of season left. Buck up, young man. You look like you look so sad. I felt so bad for you.
I think when you said there's a lot of season left, my response was, yeah, that's what I'm worried about. But now that they've won a bunch and they've pulled back to 11-0 up in the division, I mean, they mathematically really, I mean, it's possible, but it's pretty close to impossible that they blow it.
Yeah, and then I told you after those 2 wins against the Dodgers, I said, Grant, you look great. You look happy. You're joyous. You got a goal about you. And I said, yeah, I told you. Sometimes those old guys have wisdom that you just need to listen to those whole parts once in a while. But
you guys have a certain wisdom, a certain gut feeling. You can feel things in your joints that other people just can't.
Yeah, I've seen this all before. So yeah, like I said, I've been a fan since 1970. So I'm just really happy that all the fans get to be excited and happy about the Brewers because I think the Packers are going to be fine too. That's one of those things where it's cathartic. You get pounded by a team and you put it behind you. You say, okay, now we got it out of our system and we're going to move forward. And we're just going to. They don't use tape or film anymore, but if they did, we could burn it and just move forward and just put it behind us, and we're gonna be just fine.
Maybe Matt LaFleur. Maybe they called a vanilla game plan. They played second, third, fourth stringers. I mean, the result doesn't matter. But I think Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff are probably pretty curious now to see how some of these guys bounce back this week. How do they attack their preparation, attack practice? How antsy or jacked up, or motivated are they to get back on the field this weekend in preseason game number 3, now at home? I think that's something interesting. If I was a coach, I would want to see that. I wouldn't want to see my team lose, whatever it was, 27-2 first. But since now that they've lost, they get an opportunity to see how some of these guys bounce back. And I think that's valuable. If I was a coach, I think that's valuable at least.
Yeah, and I think some of the guys, somebody posted this early today on Bill's show. Some of the guys on the roster played themselves out of position yesterday, and it's going to make a lot of this easier for LaFleur, I think.
I think so. The questions that I had last night, and Clem had, I appreciate it. You didn't miss much in the first hour, just reacting to an awful preseason loss. You did miss a Pete from Monona, Dave from Monona combo back to back, though. That's a bummer for you. But you can go back on the stream if you really want to. If you want to see that combo, those two are always funny together. I just think that the three things I was looking for last night, to kind of go back to the beginning, it's probably a good opportunity with Clem had missed the first part of the show, at the back of the very beginning of the show. I said three things that I was looking for last night, and my level of optimism and excitement going into this game was pretty low. It was a Sunday night game at 7. None of the starters were playing. But I watched. The three things that I was looking for, I wrote them down on a little Post-it. I said, these are the things. Backup tackle, backup quarterback, and kicker. The kicker missed the only attempt that he got, Greg Joseph, and missed it badly. Both backup quarterbacks looked poor. Although, again, and we can circle back to this too, I'm not really sure that the Packers coaches could have done a little more if they wanted to put Michael Pratt and Sean Clifford in positions. Like, they kind of just left them out there. Slant, flat, halfback dive, halfback counter, slant, flat. It's not very inventive. Now, as quarterbacks, again, they could have hit a couple of those throws. They missed some of those throws. It's not like the quarterbacks had no chance to succeed. They did. But Matt LaFleur, Stanovich, they could have worked a little bit harder. But backup quarterback was very underwhelming. Bad quarterback play last night. And backup tackle is kind of a no-go right now. We're to the point now, and I talked with Pete Doherty about this earlier today. You'll hear that conversation coming up. Like, they're going to have to kick Elton Jenkins out or Jordan Morgan out at some point. If they need someone else to play tackle other than Walker and Tom, there's not a swing tackle. You can't put in a guy off the bench currently and still claim that you have your best 5 linemen out there. Right? They just have such a glut at the interior too, between Monk, who's looked good, and Sean Ryan, who is a veteran as far as the rookies are concerned. This is what, year number 3 or number 4? I think year number 3. Like, they have a glut on the inside. I think they're going to have to kick out Jenkins or Morgan to tackle, because I don't think they can run any of those guys out there. I just don't think they can. So backup tackle was a bust last night. Backup quarterback, 2 busts, actually, and backup kicker, whoever, Joseph, Carlson, doesn't matter. It's all bad at kicker. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Denny from Holman.
Denny from Holman. It's been a hot minute. Denny, what's going on?
Well, we had a couple different things going on, and my dad, I know I told you, shared that he was sick in the hospital and stuff. He ended up passing away.
I'm sorry to hear that, Denny. I saw your Facebook post.
Yeah, he just loved sports and your show and everything, and he was just a big Packer fan, and Brewer fan, and he's watching up above, I'm sure.
Yeah, he probably enjoyed last night's game a little bit more than we did.
Yeah.
And here we're like, God, I got to watch this and go to work tomorrow. He can kind of watch up there and laugh a little bit about it.
There you go. Yeah, he used to call them a bunch of bums, so that was his favorite thing, a bunch of bums.
A bunch of bums. Well, they kind of looked bummy last night.
They did. So my take is, do we need to sign, or did you ever think about re-signing Bakhtiari back at all?
Oh, to play tackle. I thought you were going a different route there.
No.
Interesting. I thought you were going to go back up veteran quarterback there. Do you trust Bakhtiari's health?
I think he would. He sure can't hurt. I mean,
well, that's
right
true.
now. It's when they say next man up, they always used to say that, right? Next man up, next man up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't think they could have that this year, because I don't think they got a lot of number 1 quarterback with Love. If he goes down, that's why I heard Tannehill too, as rumors are going around.
Tannehill's been getting a lot of run today. Maybe we can do the veteran quarterback thing after this next break. Bakhtiari's intriguing. Sure. I don't know. Does he want to come be a backup? Does he want to come back to the Packers? Maybe emotionally, spiritually, maybe that ship has sailed. Maybe it's he can't reopen that wound. He can't come back. Denny.
Yeah, and the sad part too is, and our kicking is still in disarray.
Yeah.
I mean, here you got the Vikings saying the guy kicks 4 kicks over 50 yards.
Yeah.
Right straight down the pipe.
Right down the pipe.
And we're still we're still like 2 weeks away from the regular season starting, and we don't know who our kicker is going to be.
I thought it last night. I laughed a little bit, Denny, and I appreciate it. I just got to run. I got to get a break in. I thought it last night. It's like, why can the Packers replace Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers? They can't replace Mason Crosby. What a weird team. What a unique organization we cheer for, or in my case, own, as I am a Packers shareholder. Let's take a quick break. If you're on hold, stay there. I'll get to you. And then after this next segment, around 5:30, 5:35, I want you to hear this conversation that I had with Pete Doherty, Green Bay Press Gazette, earlier today. Really rational, reasonable takes about last night's game. I did that earlier today as a part of Bill's show, so you hear that as well. It's the Wisco Sports Show. We're back in 3 minutes.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
The old adage, there's an old adage in baseball, if you need another hitter, go out and get the best pitcher.
The beginning of that clip reminds me of that soundbite of Bush. There's an old saying in Texas, I'm sure it's a saying in Tennessee too, or something like that. The old adage, guys, believe me, there's an old adage in baseball that says, if you need a really good hitter, just go out and get the best pitcher. The hosts are like, okay. Bruce Levine on the score. He might be right. If I asked McAlvey or Rosiak or Hodricourt, one of the old scribes, the ink-stained wretches that cover this game, with the highest level of detail and frequency. Maybe they'd be like, oh yeah, old Redlegs Buckingham said that back in the day. I don't know. That's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And it fits for the Cubs. It's equally as ridiculous for the Cubs. It's like, man, they want Corbin Burns. So they want to go spend a couple $100 million on a pitcher when starting pitching is the only part of their team that doesn't currently blow. I mean, I'm all for doubling down on a strength, but that's when your weaknesses aren't really, really weak. And they're 12 games back, 11 games back in their own division. Let's get some calls in. Let's grip it and rip it here. I want to play you coming up at the bottom of the hour at 5:35, a conversation that I had with Pete Doherty earlier today. But in the meantime, let's go to the phones. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, it's Darnell.
Darnell the chump. How are you today, Darnell?
I'm doing good. It's a Monday. We survived it, right?
Ain't that the truth?
It is the truth today. I'm glad that you went kind of back to baseball. Because I had a quick take here. I know, right? It's weird. People are like, football's here, and I'm like, but baseball's heating up too. Anyways, the Brewers, I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter today about why aren't the Brewers getting more run as one of the top teams in the MLB here? Like, why aren't they getting talked about with the Yankees and the Phillies and the Dodgers? And I personally have absolutely no problem with them not being in those conversations for one reason. They don't have that top of the line, multi-million-dollar talent that those other teams do. Like, we'd be kidding ourselves if we tried to say that we have the same talent level as the Yankees and the Dodgers, right?
Yeah.
But I also have no problem being that underdog. Like, I don't mind being in like the Arizona Diamondbacks of 2024.
Exactly. I want to be the team, and you know what? We deserve it, Darnell. I want to be the team that gets into the playoffs and ruins another fan base's year. It's always our year that's ruined. When is it going to be our turn to be that team? Because the Brewers have built their whole strategy around being that team, and other teams keep being that team to us. I'm ready for it to go the other way.
Well, and I really do think that if they continue the last week and a half or so throughout the rest of August and then into September, it's going to be hard for the pundits and whatnot in the MLB media to not take the Brewers seriously if they end up, finishing with a top 2 record. But I still think, just based on their roster and especially their starting rotation, which has been like the biggest question mark all year, I don't think that they'll ever be taken completely seriously until they knock off the Dodgers in the NLDS or something. You know what I mean? Like, just I don't think that's actually, well, I guess that is possible, but you know what I mean? Like, until they do something really weird in the postseason, and then people be like, okay, well, maybe we kind of underestimated this team a bit, So
I don't know. I buy all of that, especially the fact that I love the thought of being an underdog and getting into the playoffs and ruining another team's year. Because that's kind of what this whole thing is built on, right? The Brewers are kind of banking that one of these years it's going to be our turn. And I think it's a good strategy. I think it's a fine strategy. I think it's as good as any other strategy as you'll find for a team that has no money, right? The build it up, tear it down thing, I also think that's a fine strategy. I kind of prefer this way as a sports talk show host because they're in it every year. We have things to get fired up about every year. Whereas if they're completely falling off the table every couple of years, I'm not a big tear it down to the studs guy. It's better for my show. I think it's more fun for the fan base if we're in it every year. And I think it's going to amount to the same amount of World Series wins in the end, which is probably 0, but maybe 1. Who knows? That's kind of what we're working for here. It's kind of what we're working toward. I don't get the whole, well, we don't get the same respect as the Dodgers and the Phillies. It's Major League Baseball. Like, what do we want? Do we want them to talk about the Brewers on Get Up? Because they're not talking about the Dodgers on Get Up. You know what I mean? Like, I think people in baseball circles appreciate what the Brewers have done this year. Pat Murphy is the runaway favorite if you just look at the odds right now for manager of the year. I think they get their flowers in baseball circles. They're not going to be picked to beat the Dodgers or the Phillies, but that's, if it's about getting respect, if it's about getting attention, there's such little national attention to go around in baseball anyways. It's not the NFL where, like, if you get on a hot streak, Stephen A. Smith will talk about you and Colin Cowherd's going to lead the show with you. Man, this is baseball. And if you look, I clipped this from MLB Network earlier today. And Darnell, I'm not beating up on your call, but I hear this from a lot of Brewers fans. It's like, but you look at ESPN.com and it's all the Dodgers. It's like, well, yeah, because it's baseball. This is Mark DeRosa earlier today on MLB Network. Mark DeRosa, by the way, definitely knows ball.
They got a chance to have the number one seed in the National League when we go into the postseason. Okay? That would change everything. And you couldn't name a starter outside of Freddie Peralta for him right now. William? Yes, exactly. William Contreras has been unbelievable for this team from start to finish. And Colin Ray kind of epitomizes what they're about. Yep. I've been focused on them Saturday and yesterday, watching them. Not only Colin Ray, the lefties out of their bullpen. Mm-hmm. How about Mr. Brian Hudson? Filthy sweeper. How about Mr. Koenig coming in on Saturday and punching 3 tickets, and then Pat Murphy bringing him back in yesterday and him getting his first save? Yeah. So it's all hands on deck there. Christian Yelich goes down. They just don't seem to want to waver. Listen, the division's been down. It has. You got to be honest about it. But they're sitting there, hats off to them, with an 11-game lead. And now their entire focus has shifted from, are we going to the postseason, to, hey, let's run down the Phillies and the Dodgers and have them come to our yard.
So, like, smart baseball people talk about the Brewers. Like, they're getting run on Major League Baseball on MLB Network. I almost called it Major League Baseball Network. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna pull that one back. That'll make me sound like a doofus or an old man or both. On the Major League Baseball Network, I think they get the right amount of love, a good amount of love. They're third in the National League, and they're probably right where Matt Arnold would want them to be. Just be right on the heels of the Dodgers and the Phillies. If some things break our way, maybe we steal a first-round bye, but if not, we're right there, and we can feel great about our chances of getting in there and just messing up somebody's postseason, right? That's where Matt Arnold, that's where David Stearns always wanted to be. And I know Brewers fans are a little sick of that, always the bridesmaid, never the bride type of situation. This year, we weren't even supposed to be invited to the wedding. We were supposed to be one of those friends that's like, maybe we'll get an invite. Probably not, though. Like, no, we're standing in the wedding. Yeah, we're not the maid of honor, but we're right there. We're like the third one. We're holding a bouquet. This year, we were supposed to be nowhere near the church. We didn't even make we weren't even on the bubble. Like the first 4 out, we weren't even a part of the cuts. We weren't even supposed to be anywhere near the wedding. And here we are, standing in as a member of the wedding party. No, we're not the first one standing, but we're right there. I think this year's just been an overwhelming success relative to expectation. And no, I'm not hanging a banner because they were better than we thought or because we're 1 game behind the Dodgers. I'm not saying they should hang a banner. I'm just saying, considering where we were in spring training, I thought the Brewers would be competitive. You go back and listen to every show. I never do this. Go back and listen. You can check the receipts. I never do this, but go back and listen all the way through spring training. I said, no, they'll compete, right? That's what this division does. They'll compete. I didn't think they'd be 11 games in front of the rest of the division. That's probably more of a condemnation to the rest of the division, but what are you going to do? Sue the Brewers. They're kicking everyone's ass. Everyone's bad, and they're taking advantage of it. It'd be one thing if the division's bad and they're up 2 games. They're up 11, okay? So I think they're getting their due. The problem is, in Major League Baseball, it's 3rd or 4th fiddle sport in North America. There's not a lot of fiddle to go around. It's a very small amount of fiddle that all of the teams share. And I think the Brewers, considering everything, I think they get a good amount of fiddle. They get a good amount. Let's take a break. Pete Doherty, the Green Bay Press-Gazette. You're going to have a conversation that I did with Pete earlier today. Really good breakdown of last night's game, what we need to be bent out of shape with, what we don't need to, all that. Green Bay Press-Gazette, Pete Doherty going to join the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
The Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Hope you're having an excellent evening and your week is just off to a bitchin' start. I'm on Twitter at Wisco Grant. You can text the show. Would love to have you. 608-321-1670. Tweet me at Wisco Grant. You can comment on the live stream as well, which as of last week is up and running. Maybe some kinks here and there, but I think it's getting the job done. And it's nice to make some videos, some pictures part of the show too. It's been kind of a fun little side quest. Earlier today, Bill lost power during the Bill Michaels show because there's a construction crew working out on his street and they snipped a wire or something and the whole thing went down. So he went off the air for about 20 minutes. So I, very brave of me, had to step in. I had a headache. I was not prepared. If you think that I sit back here like, just wait, Bill's going to go off the air, and the second that he does, I'm taking over. Like, that was not the situation today. Pete Doherty was scheduled to join us in like 5 minutes, Green Bay Press-Gazette. And I texted Pete, I'm like, hey, is it cool? Like, you're stuck with me. We can always bring you back another day, but I'd still love to talk with you. And I know Pete a little bit because I'm always the one that asks him to come on. He's like, yeah, no problem. So here's a conversation. Pete Doherty breaking down that game in Denver. As ugly as it was, there's still things that we can learn and things that we can discuss. Here's our conversation from earlier today. Well, Pete, we both had to deal with a really, really ugly preseason game last night. Now, you've covered the Packers. You've seen a lot of preseason games. And I always love your approach and your hits with Bill because you're measured, right? You're not going to gas something up if you don't think it's a big deal. You're not going to peddle hot takes. How much of last night really mattered? Now that we don't have to sit and watch it anymore because it was obviously a bad-looking product. As we move into the week and as we get away from that game, what actually mattered? What do we need to care about from last night?
Still the big thing, because it was bad. And, the Denver's ones against the Packers twos was a big mismatch. And things started evening out in the second half when they both started getting really deep into their rosters. But it was bad. There's no sugarcoating it. But still with the preseason, the biggest thing, the outcomes of games don't matter at all. So what you're looking for is players who do things that make you think, this guy should make the team. This guy will be a good backup. If he's got to play, he can help you. You're looking for things like that. And there wasn't a lot of that either. There wasn't much, but there was a little bit. There was a little bit, but not much. And there was enough to leave you concerned about backup quarterback, for instance. Now, I do wonder, if Clifford hits one of those first two deep shots, they were both pretty good throws. If one of those gets caught, how much does that change things? But he's been mismatched when he was the one at the start of camp. It was a mismatch and the offense did look bad. So
sure.
The thing about replacing him or Pratt is there's nobody out there who's going to be all that much better. I think it'd be stupid to trade a fairly high draft pick for a good backup quarterback because there really aren't. Are there any good backup quarterbacks in this league? Not many, maybe not any,
Yeah.
So if Love gets hurt, there's big problems anyway. But yeah, it was bad. But you got game planning. They sat 31 guys. Come October 10th, is anybody going to be remembering back to this game? No, they're not.
No. I just, my enthusiasm for last night's game, obviously watching at home, it was low. If the game would have been on at 4 or 5, right when yesterday's Brewer game ended and we were kind of laying around, it was a nice Sunday afternoon, I probably would have been a little bit more jazzed up to watch it, but it didn't start until 7. I'm like, man, I'm only so interested in preseason games as it is. Now we're having to wait around until 7. And then it just, there was little to no entertainment value, right? The result is one thing, but if there's some big plays and there's some entertainment, that's another. We didn't even get that. You talked about backups, right? You'd love to feel confident about this backup or that backup. And we didn't even get that last night. So what's most concerning to you? I'll give you 3 options and we can talk about whatever you want. Backup tackle. And I agree, we didn't really get any confidence there last night. Backup quarterback, you just kind of mentioned, or kicker, because that's not a backup or a starter position, but with every preseason game, you'd like to get more reps and kicks, and you'd like to feel better about that position. And the only kick they attempted last night, Greg Joseph missed it. So of those 3 choices, what do you think most concerns you after watching last night?
Yeah, I'd put kicker last on that list just because both of those guys have been pretty solid all camp. Carlson's been better than he was last year in camp, and Joseph until recently was kicking the ball really well. So they'll be better off there than they were last year, regardless of which way they go or if they, claim somebody gets cut by somebody else. I would say still, if I'm them, I'm still more concerned. I'm most concerned about tackle and whole line depth. I just don't know that they go more than 6 deep. Sean Ryan's good and he could be a starter. And if he's not, I can put him in. But at tackle, I just don't see a lot there. In fact, it's becoming more apparent than ever that,
if they get an injury at tackle, they're going to have to put Elton Jenkins or Jordan Morgan out there and bring in Ryan.
Sure.
I think that's a no-brainer. And even if another tackle gets hurt, maybe they even consider moving the other one outside and putting in Jacob Monk. Probably not, but I just don't know that for quality depth, that they go deeper. Six, it's hard to have good depth with the cap and the roster turnover, but man, you'd really, they were deeper last year when they had Yash Time, and they knew they could put him in, and they'd be okay at tackle.
They seem to have a good, tell me if I'm wrong, they seem to have a good group of interior linemen with Ryan. Monk has really impressed from everything that I've read. They just don't necessarily have that tackle. Why do you think it is that they seem intent on having a swing tackle, right? Like if one of those tackles goes down, we're not going to kick somebody out. We want to keep Jenkins at guard. We want to keep Morgan at guard. Do you think we're going to end up in a place anyways where if a tackle goes down, they kick somebody out? Because if we're going to end up there anyways, why don't we just start preparing for that now? Why don't we operate that way now so we'd be more prepared when that eventually happens, if it happens? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. The reasons, most teams prefer to have the swing tackle just so you'd rather not be moving guys, because then theoretically you're getting weaker at two positions. You move Jenkins to left tackle. He's not as good as your starter, and the guy you're replacing him with isn't as good a guard, so you're getting weaker at two spots instead of one. So ideally, you have the swing tackle who can play either side. But I get why, because they want to give Morgan a chance to win the starting job, so they didn't want to play him at tackle, and then he got hurt. So that's followed up that plan. But with the one thing with Jenkins is, he doesn't need to work out there really. He can just do it, and he didn't play last night anyway. But he can just do it. He's a very talented guy, and they can just stick him out there basically whenever they need to.
Okay.
And he'll be at least okay out there without, much practice time or preseason game time there.
So that's not something they need to rep. That's not a plan they need to make. They kind of know that they have that card in their back pocket, I suppose. I hadn't thought about that. Pete Doherty, Green Bay Press Gazette.
In the regular season, though, in regular season practice, they're going to have to do that.
Sure.
They'll need to get him. They'll need to put him, whichever, whether it's him or Morgan, whichever one they're going to bump out there. They'll need to do it at least a little bit so he's not just coming out of the blue. So you're right there. But just in the preseason with the injury risks and all that, and Jenkins isn't hardly playing anyway. I don't think they need to do it in the preseason.
It's just an opportunity to rep these other guys in the preseason. That's not an opportunity that Elton Jenkins needs. I totally get it. Pete Doherty writes to Green Bay Press Gazette, USA Today. He's on Twitter at Pete Doherty. Very easy to find. Let's talk about some of these injuries. This rookie class, I think this is a great draft, Pete. And I think we've had conversations. You and Bill have talked about it. I think we're all very optimistic about this draft. It's just a little concerning because they've all missed so much time in camp. Lloyd has had injuries. Cooper's missed a lot of time. They just got Hopper back from an injury, and that was maybe the one bright spot that I noticed last night. It's like, okay, he's running around hitting guys. That makes me feel good. I hate when rookies miss time in camp. It always makes me nervous. So where do we stand? Where do you stand on Lloyd and Cooper and some of these other guys that we're also excited about? We just haven't gotten to see him much this in preseason or in practice, really.
Yeah, Cooper showed ability, but it's always hard to tell in practice because in the end you're not tackling. You're just touching off, so you don't see the hitting like you saw with Hooper, for instance. He just looked. You're right. He was the one guy. He was like one of two or three guys who actually jumped off. What we saw. And I called him Hooper. It's Hopper.
Yeah.
He played. He hit. He looks like he's going to get on the field. I don't know. Cooper has missed at least 2 weeks now, I think. I'm assuming. Obviously, he's a little more talented. He was the second round pick and a high second rounder, but he's missed a lot of time. I wonder if Hopper's going to get out there. He'll probably get out there sooner than Cooper will, unless Cooper is back this week, and maybe he will be. And Lloyd has, he missed early, and now he's missed a week and a half or whatever with the hamstring. And how tricky those things could be. We don't know if he's back this week or maybe he misses. Maybe they open the season with him. Maybe they put him on IR at final cuts, and then he'd have to miss at least 4 games. So that they are losing a lot of really valuable reps that would help them contribute more as the season went on, even if they didn't play early. They're missing really important playing time, and that does take a bite out of what that group might contribute. But it is a long season still, so by November, maybe Cooper, even earlier, maybe Cooper's getting out there some. But right now, it's looking like Hopper's a guy who's going to get on the field.
I think I've done this every preseason and every camp. We always talk ourselves into, at least fans do, and I want to get your take, which is my point, but fans, we always say, man, defensive line, look at all these guys, Slayton and Brooks and Woolen. It's like, man, all of these guys are great. Look at how much depth they have. And then all too often we get to week one, it's like, actually, they're mostly average to below average guys, right? And of course, I didn't mention Gary and Van Ness and Clark, but we always talk ourselves into guys, 3, 4, 5 along the defensive line. But is it different this year? I feel like it might be different. I really like this defensive line group and this edge rushing group, the outside linebacker group. What have you seen from the front and how they've looked in this Jeff Hafley defense? Let's wrap up with that. I want your thoughts on that group.
Yeah, it does look better than the norm, better than usual.
Cool.
I remember there was a play where Wooden got blown out of the hole, but it was a double team, and so they ran right through it. But overall, I think both him and Brooks have been good rotational players. The D line is where you really like to rotate guys through to keep everybody fresh. I mean, I remember those really good Seattle defenses. They had 8 guys, and they just rotated those guys through, and their pass rush was so strong from start to finish in games, in part because of that. And I think all those guys are going to play a lot. In fact, there's a place in the NFL for Jonathan Ford. I mean, he is a big guy.
Yeah.
And he can play the run. Now, those guys don't make tackles, but they really plug things up. And if you go through the game tape, and I went through it with Eric Bronchek just before we talked, as a matter of fact, and this guy played a pretty decent game. And, I don't think he's going to make the 53. If he doesn't, there's at least a small chance somebody would pick him up who's really light on D linemen. Most teams have guys they like, but you never know. But he'll if he makes it through, he'll be on the practice squad. Maybe he'll even make the Packers 53. But there's a place for him to play and to get some early down snaps and be a rotational part of a defensive line. So they go 6 deep this year, and I think it is a long way back to your original point. It is a better D line than they've had for the last 10 or 15 years. I think it's a little better quality depth than they've had.
So you're telling me this year might be the year. I try to tell myself every year it's going to be the year, but hearing that from you, that makes me feel better, Pete. That's awesome. I'm excited about that group a lot. And we've certainly talked about the depth and all those names that you mentioned. Pete Doherty, read his work, Green Bay Press Gazette, and the USA Today Network as well. And Eric Branchek's going to start doing Monday mornings on Bill's show to talk about the film that Pete was talking about. Thank you so much, Pete, for coming on and helping us make sense a little bit from last night, because I know a lot of people are reacting strongly. Thank you for coming on and telling us what matters, and for dealing with me instead of Bill at the last minute. Thank you so much.
It was great talking with you, Grant. Thanks for having me.
Pete Doherty, Green Bay Press Gazette. Not the most polished interview I've ever given, but I contend any interview would have been fine there. I wasn't expecting to host for Bill. I had to fill about 25 minutes. I had a little bit of a headache. And between you and me, I was reading the Wikipedia page for not this alien movie. Is this Romulus? I was reading Prometheus. I've never seen any of them. And I'm like, these look kind of interesting. And I was reading the plot. I was scrolling because, by the way, I had handled my producer duties for the day. I had the guests lined up. I had audio. I don't remember what Bill was talking about. I wasn't needed at that moment. It might have even been during a commercial break. I pulled the Wikipedia up, and then all of a sudden Bill cut out, and I just wasn't sharp. The interview was good. I liked the content. Pete was great. I just could have stuck the landing on a couple of those questions a little bit better than I did. Speaking of sticking the landing, let's take our final break. We'll wrap up the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
But they've pieced together the rest of these guys, some of whom, many of whom, have kind of come out of nowhere. I'm talking about Jared Koenig, minor league deal last November. I'm talking about Brian Hudson. He was the guy DFA'd for Yoshinobu Yamamoto and then traded to the Brewers from the Dodgers. Trevor McGill was a minor trade with the Twins in April of 23. Joel Payams was part of the Esteury Ruiz heist that also brought the Brewers William Contreras. And Elvis Peguero, he came over in the Hunter Renfroe deal. That was in November of 2022. So they have built a bullpen. They have developed their bullpen on the fly, and they have built one of the best bullpens in the National League.
Ken Rosenthal on his podcast earlier today. There's some of the national love that Darnell the Chump was begging for. Why don't the Brewers get some more attention? Well, there you go. I mean, you mispronounced three of the guys' name, and one of the guys you mentioned just got DFA'd today, but attention is attention, right? All publicity is good publicity. We got time. Let's sneak in a call real quick here before we wrap up the show. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. Good evening, Eric. I was thinking that might be you.
Good evening. Yes, I'm so happy that I got through here before the end of the day. Let's start out with sports, right?
Sure.
We got to keep it on sports, right? I think this baseball season is going to heat up, and I think you're in a prime position, Grant, with your baseball knowledge and your ability to talk about it and make sense.
Well, those are two different things. I have an ability to talk about it. I don't know if that means that I'm knowledgeable, but yes.
But you're going to be, I would say, probably the best guy in the state on the radio to talk about this. I just do.
Well, as a show, we're in the catbird seat, as they say, Eric. I wouldn't disagree with that.
You are. Yeah, I mean, you don't get this content anywhere else. You know, their complaint. If you are a sports fan hoping that you're going to get national attention on your team, you know, I think you should give that up. It's only going to be when it's something bad happens.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And especially in baseball. Like, Stephen A. Smith isn't talking about baseball. So national attention is pretty hard to come by as it is, especially for a team in Milwaukee. Although it used to be on SportsCenter, you'd always see on the side something's brewing, right? Or strange brew like that. That'd always be if the Brewers had won, like 6 or 7 in a row, they'd always get a shout out like that. But that's about it.
Right. And then the Packers, you guys, this is like the first negative thing that's happened since last year Thanksgiving.
And we're in shambles.
Right? And it's nothing. You just got nicked by some negativity. It's just a nick.
Just
like
a little
nick
bit.
on the ear.
Yeah.
You just just ping right by it. No problem. And then I've heard that you're commuting a lot now. said that you had a long commute last week. Like, did you move?
Yes. And I actually thought of you because our commute is not that dissimilar. I don't remember what you drive to Nacita every day. Is that where you go?
I do drive to a secret location and fight crime every day.
Okay, yeah,
Do
that's
you
right.
do the same?
Sorry
Long drive.
to put you on blast like that. Yeah, not that city, but a city of similar distance to where I work. Yeah.
So you're driving out on I-94 then?
Oh, well, I was a man of 94 long before I had to drive it to work every day. Or you're on I-90.
Well, here's a little advice for you.
20 seconds.
Do not start calling sports talk radio shows because you'll become addicted. You'll become addicted.
Oh, I
And
needed
you
to hear
won't be able
that.
to stop.
I needed to hear
You won't
that.
be able to do it, Grant.
I think I'd start if I didn't host a show every day, Eric. I'm sorry to let you go. I have to go. The show's done in like 8 seconds. Tomorrow, we'll connect with Mike Clemens at some point this week. I don't know when. Enjoy the Brewers tonight. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Do they even play tonight? I don't know. I wasn't wrong.